Hello and welcome to another episode of Set Musings. So this episode we're going to look at 10th edition. Now I know up till now I've been skipping over core sets because basically they're reprints of earlier cards, and in terms of that particular makeup, 10th edition is no different. It's a set of reprints. But I thought there's a couple of reasons why I wanted to talk about this set rather than wait until say M10 when I start to talk about core sets, because of course M10 did contain 50% new cards and 50% reprints. But the reason why I want to talk about this particular core set is, like I said, two reasons. One is it was the first set that I bought, and secondly I think there's sufficiently interesting things going on with the set as a whole, that even though they are reprints, there was some other shenanigans going on in the set. So just before we get on and talk about those, sort of things to look out for generally. So keywords abilities, we've got Flash, Lifelink, Reach and Shroud, and they're all newly keyworded abilities in this particular, that started in this particular set. Now, the set size is interesting. You can see up here it says 508 cards, and I'll explain why that's that high. There's actually 383 cards in the set, 121 commons, 121 uncommons, 121 rares, and 20 basic lands. Now, what they've done for this set is, and you can see it clearly here actually, so you can see the set of a whole, there's two versions, if you like, of Ancestors Chosen. Same with Angelic Blessing, but with Angelic Chorus only seems to be one of. And what had happened was the set featured for the foils, where the original printing had a reminder text in it, they removed it. So effectively it's a different printing of the card. And of course, where the card didn't have reminder text on it, then any foil there would be the same as the non-foil card. So that's why there is an additional number of cards, taking it to from the 383 cards in the set to the 508. And the nice thing in Scryfall is it's possible to break this down. So you can see here's the 383 cards in boosters, and then these are the foil only booster cards. And so for these ones you can see the foil version we have without the reminder text. So in effect it is a different card, however it does have the same number as the non-foil version as well. So only 125 cards out of the 383 cards had reminder text, and therefore had this slightly different foil where the reminder text has been removed. Also, if you notice with some of them, it is the case that they also had, the foil one had different flavor text on it that didn't necessarily appear on the non-foil version. Let's see if we can see a good example of that. Yeah, so here for instance we've got a bit more space, so that now has flavor text on it. I'm not sure whether any actually had completely different flavor text, but certainly where there was increased room for that to happen because of the removal of the rules text, then suddenly we have the appearance of let me see if I can find another one where that's the case. Yeah, here you see. This one has reminder text, this one has flavour text. Non-foil, foil. And so on. So yeah, it does look... For some reason I had thought that for some of the cards, if there was already flavour text on the non-foil version, there was completely different flavour text on the foil, but that obviously isn't the case. So I must have misunderstood there, or yeah, I'm not sure what made me think that actually. But anyway, so that's the thing they did with the foiling. Release date on this was July the 13th, 2007. In commemoration of the release of 10th edition, the first game day was held on July the 14th, and the release card given out at that event was Raya Dawnbringer. You'll notice as well the first core set since the limited core sets to have a black border. So black borders were back in for core sets. In between, all the way through to 9th, they had white borders. If you go way back to the first sets in Magic to the limited sets, they did also have black borders, so that was reintroduced. So you saw here 383 cards and then 125 of these slightly different foil versions. Okay, let's get in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what was in the set. So we had a few cards with flash on it, newly keyworded, 3 of them, 1 in white, 1 in red, 1 in green. So with flash, you may play the spell anytime you could play an instant. So up until this point, they hadn't been specifically keyworded. So prior to this, flash would have been spelt out. You'll also notice one of these does actually have reach on it. So let's have a look at some of the other keyworded abilities on here before we start to move into some of the cycles. So we've got lifelink in the set, but only on 1 card. So again, it's been keyworded. As here has, I think Trample was already keyworded in the set. But and the other thing to remember with core sets, they are more likely to have reminder text on the cards for evergreen abilities. So yeah, you can see it's got the 4. It's both the reminder text for both lifelink and following up with reminder text for trample. So just 1 lifelink card. You saw that within those cards that had flash, one of them was lifelink. It was one of them had reach. There were actually 3 reach cards in total, and no surprise, they were all spiders. And again, you can see here it's got the reminder text. This creature can block creatures with flying. And then finally, the last newly keyworded ability in the set is Shroud. And with Shroud, and with that was it in terms of the ones with the particularly newly keyword. But of course, in the set, there's other things in here as well beyond those newly keyworded abilities. But those are the ones I wanted to have a look at. It's interesting as well here. There's one each of the example of how Shroud might be applied. You can see here, this one actually gives you Shroud, the player who controls True Believer. With this enchantment, it actually gives the creature that's enchanting Shroud. And this, with this particular one, the Pincer Beetles, the creature itself has Shroud. And then this one, another example, not dissimilar to this, but of course it's a piece of equipment where the equipped creature has Shroud. So with this one, the enchanted creature has Shroud, and with this one, the equipped creature has Shroud. And this is the artwork I really like for Whisper Silk Cloak. There's several different pieces of artwork for this particular card. This is the original Darksteel artwork, and then Magic 2010 had the newer artwork. And I think most of those have got that newer artwork, but this is one I like. In terms of the cycles, we had a cycle of these artifacts, which whenever a player played a certain colour of spell, and there's one for each colour, you got one life. They're all 2 to cast. And they were reprints from, I believe, Darksteel. So they were reprinted from Darksteel. With core sets, I mean, when you've got things like cycles for core sets up until 10th edition, then obviously those cycles are going to be lifted from a previous set. So this was a cycle of cards from Cold Snap, and you can see here they all hate on a particular, or hose a particular enemy colour. So for white, the enemy colours are black and red. For blue, red or green. For black, green or white. For red, plains or islands, so white or blue. And then for green, blue or black. And they're from Cold Snap. Now, there's a couple of land cycles in the set as well, interestingly enough. I'll deal with the mono-coloured ones first while we're talking about mono-coloured cards, because there were some multicoloured cards in the set. Oh, there we go. I included my little show notes there. So they were from, if you hadn't spotted that already, they were from Urza's Legacy. And they will turn into a creature, or have the ability to turn into a creature. You can see they're all triggered by 1 and then the appropriate colour. They all come into play tapped, and they can also tap for the particular land colour of mana as well. So what's this? This is a 1/5, 2/1 with flying, 1/1 with regeneration, 2/1 with first strike, and then the green one's a 3/3 with trample. And the activated ability, I don't think there's anything particularly unique about that activated ability. So there was a cycle of muses from Legions, so from a previous set. And that's the Windborn Muse, Dreamborn Muse, Graveborn Muse, Lavaborn Muse, and Seedborn Muse. And you can see they're all at rare. They're all spirit creature cards, and they have a powerful but unusual type of ability, or unusual for the time. And if you got lot you see here, so we've got, you know, this one here in green, we're untapping all permanents you control. The white one, creatures can't attack unless you control, your controller pays 2 for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. The blue one, we've got mill here, but it's tied to the number of cards in hand. For the black one, we've got you draw X cards, you lose X life, and X is tied to zombies. And then with the red one, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 2 or fewer cards in hand, it deals 3 damage to him or her. So there's a twist on these, either some way that it's conditional, or it might be slightly unusual for the colour. Now going back to lands, there was a full cycle, both allied and enemy coloured lands in this set, these ones. So where they basically ping you for 1 damage if you opt to use them to generate the particular colour mana. If you just want to use them to generate colourless, then there's no problem there. You don't, you know, there's no downside. And they're, you know, Painlands, because they're, you know, the use for coloured mana is painful, based on the damage that they do to you. Now, these come in from originally from a couple of sources. Now, of course, these were reprinted where they featured in 9th edition. So these were also all in 9th edition. But if you're looking to see where they came from originally, well, the allied colour ones. So this one here. Was it the Coupleson Forest? Green, white one, and there's one, yeah, black, green, Lanois Waste. So, you know, if you think of Wooburg Order, it's the colour next to it. So it would be, oh, hang on. No, sorry, it's my mistake. The first, it is actually got them in the right order here. So the first 5 are the allied ones, and then the next 5 are the enemy ones. The allied ones came from Ice Age, and the enemy ones came from Apocalypse originally. And then, as I've said, the last time they were seen prior to 10th was in 9th edition. Next cycle we have here is this particular one, which is a cycle of Weavers. And if you look at here, you can see we've seen this in some other cycles I've seen already. There was those enemy colour hoses. So we've got abilities on here, all cost of 2, and they're all as well 2/1 wizards, and they can only target creatures of this particular creature's allied colour. So the white one, it's green or blue. The blue one, white or black. So that's the colours either side of the particular colour on the colour pie, on the Wooburg colour pie. Now, before we go on to the basic lands, because I know that's what everybody's here for, there was a mega cycle in here as well. but it was actually a mega cycle in that it started off as a single card in Lorwyn, Gold Meadow Harrier, and then there were 4 colours in it. There were 4 cards in it: Cloud Sprite, Festering Goblin, Spark Elemental, and Land War Elves, and they were all from 10th edition. And they were actually, there was a tie-in to Future Sight. So all of those creatures, the Gold Meadow Harrier from Lorwyn, and the Cloud Sprite, Festering Goblin, Spark Elemental, and Land War Elves from this set, were all creatures that had previously, in a previous set in Future Sight, there was a spell shaper which created those creatures. So there's a connection between this set and Future Sight. So already, stuff from Future Sight was spilling over. So basic lands, there you can see, at this point, hurrah, they had actually 4 pieces of artwork for each land. Not where we currently are, often with either just 2 or even just 1. And of course these have been pulled in from throughout Magic's history. And I can definitely remember this from an earlier set I've covered. And these here, the Cityscape ones certainly look like they would have come from maybe Ravnica. Original Ravnica. I don't know whether these ones are from Kamigawa. Oh, I'm trying to... Is this from Mirage? Don't think it will tell me because it will just go through all of them. Yeah. There are ways of doing some of these related searches, but I don't know if it finds instances where this has been used before. But certainly they've come from earlier sets. Very nice. You can see this looks particularly old school. I'm just looking down to see. See, we've got the John Avon stuff here. Very nice. Another special thing about this set was that there were legendaries in it. And there was quite a few actually. I mean, I think it was, if I'm correct, first time they've ever printed legendaries in a core set. That wasn't a thing. The other thing they tended to avoid in core sets as well was multicoloured cards as well. You can see here we've actually got 2 in each colour. Now, Cho Mano, Arcanus, Ascendant Invocar, Kamal the Pit Fighter, and Malimo, Morrow Sorcerer were also in the theme decks. They were in there as well. So one of these was in the theme deck, one wasn't. There's also a legendary artifact in the form of a legacy weapon as well. Now, what I wanted to do, as our legendaries, is, as I like to just show you, there were a couple of extra non-basics that we haven't seen yet. So we had a look at the mono-coloured uncommons. We had a look at the dual lands at rare, but in addition they also reprinted Quicksand and Terramorphic Expanse as well was in the set. So cool to see those. there were 185 creatures in the set. Now, one thing I wanted to point out in here, I think in this set, I'm trying to remember whether walls were a thing a little bit. Yeah, there wasn't quite a cycle of walls, but there's definitely 5 walls, and 2 of those are in white. There was no black wall. It's a blue, a red, and a green one. Now, the other thing it's interesting to look at when we're talking about creatures is a number of creatures had ETB effects, into the battlefield effects. There were 25 of those. I'm not saying that's something new to this set, but I just wanted to flag it up, because sometimes we do associate core sets with slightly simpler mechanics, and it's a good way to get a feel for, in terms of the creatures, what sort of abilities, keywords they might have on them in a core set. And one thing is there are a number of those cards, 25 in total, in here, that had an ETB effect. Now we're on the subject of enter the battlefield effects. It's sometimes quite interesting to see, and this is something I'm going to do going forward when I look at creatures, is how many creatures in the set had some sort of activated ability on them. So there were 59 cards which had some sort of activated ability. And just to sort of do a bit of compare and contrast, you can get a feel, because you may have missed there how many total creatures there were. So there were 185 creatures. So out of that, 59 which had some sort of activated ability on them. Now, there were also creatures which had, in the set, which had a static ability on them. So there's 90 cards with some sort of static ability. And that might be keyworded or not, as the case may be. So all that leaves us really with, if we've looked at creatures that had ETBs on them, creatures that had activated, creatures that had a static ability. Let's have a look and just see out of the total how many were vanilla. So there are actually 12 vanilla creatures in the set, with slightly more in green than any other colour. Next thing to have a look at in the set is just to get a feel for how many regular enchantments we have. So we have 23 regular enchantments, doing a number of different things. We've got creature pump and doing the usual thing that enchantments do, because of course these are reprints from all over Magic's history. I believe for this set, Manabobs was in here. I believe in this set, players got to vote actually what sort of cards they would like in here. I think that was also a thing when they designed the set. 21 cards were straight auras, so that's ones that can be attached to creatures. You've got pacifism in here, contaminated bond, fear and holy strength, lure, blanchwood armor. And again, if you're familiar with sets prior to Holy Strength, prior to this particular core set, then you probably recognise where some of these come from. Moving on to different types of artefacts that we had in the set. We've got in here, it's going to actually come up. Being a little on the slow side. So we've got 24, what I would call just, regular artifacts. You can see we've got Pithing Needle in here, spell book, and of course that includes that cycle of those life gain artifacts we saw as well. And you can see we've got a mana rock here. We've got Coat of Arms, which is a great tribal card, although it is across the board, it's symmetrical. Starnal Flute, interesting card for tutoring creature cards, albeit conditional. Crucible of Worlds, which allows you to play land cards from your graveyard. Of course, Doubling Cube was in here as well, reprinted, and Howling Mine. Icy Manipulator. We've got James Day Tome, which is a way of drawing cards on an artifact. Millstone. So lots of interesting things there. Now let's have a look at artifact creatures, because sometimes it's a good idea to just see how many of the creatures are actually artifact creatures. We've got 9 of those, including Platinum Angel. So 7 to cast 4/4, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. And interesting as well to see creatures that have the ability on sacrifice to generate coloured mana. Three, 4 for 3. Downside is you can't play creature spells. So we've already seen one piece of equipment so far, because I was looking at life gain in here, and you saw we had the life link and we had Loxodon and Warhammer come. So there's only 3. We've already seen this Whisper Silk Cloak because it had Shroud on it. And then we've got also Leonin Scimitar, which gives a creature 1/1 for one. It's 1 to cast and then 1 to equip. So we'll have a look, see how many instants we have in this set. 44 instants. And as I scroll through there, you can probably see the sort of things that are going on here. It's a core set, so they're going to make sure that there's, nice, straightforward utility in it. That's going to blend well in terms of maybe filling holes in standard. At this point, core sets were in rotation, or we're in for 2 years. So core sets, it was 2 years between when core sets were printed. And then, of course, if you remember, we went over to a situation where core sets were just around for 1 year. And then there's that strange bit of overlap you used to get because of that as well. Just before rotation, where there would actually be 2 core sets, I think, in standard, if my memory serves me correctly. So 46 sorceries. Things like Wrath of God in here, and Sift, and Traumatize, and Assassinate, Deathmark, Diabolic Tutor, Mind Rot, Reign of Tears, Plague Wind, Blaze, Cone of Flame, Demolish, Lava Axe. It's not unusual to see that in a core set. I see that quite a bit. Commune with Nature, Hurricane, Overrun, Rampant Growth, Sylvan Scrying. So what I thought I'd do, and I'm going to try and do this going forward, is with the instants and sorceries, I thought it might be interesting to focus in on particular things that you often see that instants and sorceries are doing. So in terms of destruction, we have 14 instants and sorceries that destroy something in some capacity. Enchantments, either targeted or all. All creatures, tapped creatures. We've got the black ones here. A specific type of creature. Destroy all creatures you don't control. They can't be regenerated. Land. We have a terror in here. Non-artifact, non-black creatures. Cryoclasm, which will destroy planes or islands. Artifacts or lands, demolish, shatterstorm, all artifacts, smash, a target artifact, creeping mold, artifacts, enchantments or land, and then naturalize, target artifact or enchantment. So we've got all of our bases covered there in the various colours. I was also curious in the set. Sometimes you get a bit of life gain crops up in core sets, and we've got some life gain shenanigans going on, either in white where you've just got pretty much either life gain as a result of something else happening, or some life adjustment. But then you've got interesting things to do with black where you've got life drain. So life is being drained from one thing to give it to another, or just straight life loss. It's conditional in some way. Again, with green, we're seeing life gain here from natural spring. Also, interesting thing to see in the instance of sorceries is, where we might have, say, damage prevention in a set. Sorry, not damage prevention, but they're basically direct damage. So interesting to see we've got a bit of damage going on in white here. Most of our direct damage obviously is occurring in red. Some is conditional, but there's quite a big variety there. And then we've got essence drain in black and consume spirit in black, where again there's this relationship between damage and life gain as well. And then hurricane, we've got conditional damage to each creature with flying and each player. Have a look and just see maybe the sort of things you might see in blue and see whether they spread out into other. So there's all our counter spells. And then another thing that you often see a lot of in blue is bounce. But also in black and green, of course, we've got ways of getting stuff back from the graveyard as well. What about another thing in blue is tap down. How does that look in a core set? You can see there I've got a few things here to tap or untap. And then things like card draw as well. So this is interesting. You can see a number of cards here have card draw sort of stapled on as well as doing something else. In fact, that's cropping up quite a bit in this set, if you look. And also it's not the case that it's waiting until it's not like a cantrip where it's waiting to do the draw. And this is actually occurring at the point at which the spell resolves. I think Tidings is the only Council of Soratami is 2 cards, Tidings is 4. This one does rely on you to discard cards. Now sometimes you'll sometimes see a bit of mill going on. We got Traumatize, which is specifically like a targeted mill, instant or sorcery. There was, if you remember, there was also an artifact in here that was milling as well. So there's only one card in here that, or one instance or sorcery that does milling specifically. But of course there could be some creatures in here that might be able to attach to it, or like I said, there's an artifact as well in here that in the set that will do that. I'm also interested to see how much they've got of stuff, you can steal at either instant or sorcery speed. So again, blue, that's interesting. In blue we've got one that gains control of an aura, and the one in red is sorcery. No doubt, as we've seen, there's also enchantments that in blue that will do a similar thing. So and there we go. There's our messing around with people's hands as well. A very, very black thing to do. I was curious as to whether there were any other cards in here that mess with, specifically reference the graveyard in terms of instants or sorceries. You can see there's a beacon in here. My understanding is that not all of the beacons were in this core set because they're a bit too imbalanced. So the whole cycle wasn't reprinted in here. So I think that's all I want to do in terms of just going through, looking at instants and sorceries and just seeing the sort of things that they might do from a support spell point of view. So back to the set as a whole, again, as I pointed out, you've got this business they did with the foils. And as we scroll through, obviously with here, you're going to see slight inconsistencies in the artwork because a lot of the artwork would have been pulled from reprints. So yeah, we're not going to see the same sort of consistency we've seen when we've been talking about other things, but that's nice because you get to see the artwork from a lot of the original cards, like stuff like Tundra Wolf, Useful Knight. So some rather sort of old looking artwork. I'm trying to remember actually with Clone, when that was changed over. So 9th edition, that's the one from Onslaught, and then you got the revised one there. It's pretty cool. Right, prices. So most expensive card. Oh, we've already. So we're in a core set. So yeah, there's all of these cards are below $10 in this core set. It's interesting, isn't it? Look, the that must be the foil version. I don't know if you can see that. So actually, that's one way of looking at it. I didn't think of that. So yeah, the alternative foil without the. So for this foil of this card, it's been printed without the reminder text, and of course, $121. So so there are expensive cards in the core set because of the way that this core set, because of the way they did it. So again, look, the foil version without the reminder text, $79. Elvis Champion. Oh yeah, now it makes more sense. So yeah, there are expensive cards in here. Birds of Paradise. I take that all back now. It's all right. Just the pennies just dropped. That top there because of these, right? So we are actually going to see quite a few expensive cards because of this foiling business. But of course this card here, even in its non-foil version, is still above $10. Oh, Crucible of Wells, of course. Yeah, even... Yeah, this had no reminder text on it, so it's only in one form. Who knows what the foil version of this would be if that happened to have reminder text. Not that there would ever need to be reminder text on it. Whisper Silk Cloak. And it looks like suddenly prices have sort of... Oh no, there we go. So there is. I should go through my... Because I opened quite a bit of 10th edition. I never really thought about this, because when I think about foils generally, yeah, it's not always the case that they are super expensive, except if there's a reason why they might be playing where people want to bling their deck up. But yeah, these ones it's quite a big price difference on these. So yeah, I stand corrected. This is does have some very expensive cards in it, relatively speaking, for a core set. Wow. Oh, of course, Platinum Angel. And these foils just keep coming. Of course, Dublin Cube. 22.98. Brushlands. So now we've got the Painlands. It's funny to see it where there's all these cards more expensive than the dual lands in the set. So we're still floating around $20 here. Yeah, this is reasonably pricey. Look at the foil one. 17. It's not very often I get onto 2 pages so far. Second page. Oh, $15. This must be, is this our regular Bird of Paradise? Yeah, so we're getting it to 13 now. There's the foil version. Goblin King. Underground Ribbon, Field Marshal. See the price difference there between the regular one and the one Sans reminder text in foil. This must be our regular Platinum Angel one. Loxodon and Warhammer foil version. So we're getting close to the $10 threshold. It's funny, look at the difference. Regular version like 36 cents. Foil version 11.72. Oh, here we go. Are we nearly there? Oh, of course, March of the Machines. This cropped up in a... Didn't that turn up in a Plane Chase deck? Oh, no, yeah. That's right. In front of me, Arch Enemy. Yeah, Arch Enemy. And there we go. Wow. So, yeah. Those foils certainly added something to that set. And then, surprise, surprise, EDH ranking, Terramorphic Expanse, way up there. And then we've got Mindstone, Rampant Growth, Land War Elves, Birds of Paradise, Painlands, Seaborn Muse, Diabolic Tutor, Whisper Silk Cloak, Wrath of God, Crucible of Worlds, Coat of Arms, Loxodon Warhammer, Aura of Silence, Grave Pact, ornithopter as a foil ornithopter. $7. Okay. Howling Mine. All the good stuff. Evacuations in here. For some reason I thought that was really expensive. Like, you know, way above $10, but obviously not. So, yeah. Oh, Arcanis, hint, hint. Right, so there we have it. That was pretty interesting. A lot of stuff there that I'd completely forgotten about, which is the whole purpose of doing this set Musings from my perspective. Is it acts as a quite a nice reminder of basically, you know, what went down in sets and all the various things that you know, all the various gems, so to speak, that you often find when you start to slice and dice through a set. So the only thing I really need to do now is just talk a little bit about what's coming up in the Wednesday episode. So before I do that, I did mention about the theme decks. So there were 5, one for each colour. They're monocolour theme decks, but they did have one legendary in each of the colours in them from the set. The other thing with core sets, and you know, it's the first time I've spoken about a core set, I think, although I did speak, I think, about M14 in a related set Musings to do with slivers, I think, but I wouldn't have spoken about theme decks. But theme decks in core sets, for quite a while, were actually 40 cards and not 60, and that was something that ultimately they also did in later themed, when they became intro decks. So when they went from theme decks to intro decks, there was a period where all of the intro decks were actually 40 cards, and that caused a lot of confusion at F&M apparently, where people would go in, pick up a deck, and then find that they, you know, were new to Magic, buy like an intro deck, and then find that they didn't have enough cards to play in Standard. So ultimately, over time, we went back up to 60 cards, and 60 cards for everything, including core sets. And now, of course, we're in a position where there are no intro decks anymore. It's all commander decks in the sets. So no using there's no like standard legal intro decks anymore. And they all have 2 rares in them as well. So those are the intro decks. I've actually got the full complement of these. I picked them up pretty cheap at the time, actually. So, going back to talking about Wednesday's episode of Commander Durdle, you can see here we're ready to go. This is our card pool. We have, rather fortunately, our Arcanis the Omnipotent. And yeah, we're set up with the pool, and of course what I need to do is basically prune this down so we can go for a mono blue wizard deck with all sorts of interesting shenanigans based on the ability. Hopefully, again, we'll be using the algorithm, and we'll have to see what rabbit hole that takes us down. And there we have it. I think that's a wrap on this particular episode. So thanks once again for watching this particular episode of Set Musings, where we took a nostalgic look at 10th edition. Came out on the 13th of the 7th, 2007. Wow. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.